Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are about 12 or so hours into the Cyberpunk collaboration, probably longer than that. I'm bad at keeping track of time. And likely, a lot of you have already done some polls on a certain number of banners that launch with version 3.4. And if you've done that, you might see that you have some certain tuning rewards available, and then you might have certain packages available in the shop as well. And so a lot of people are wondering, especially with something like this, where you can confirm whose wave band you actually want, whose should you actually get. And that's what we're going to be doing today, ladies and gentlemen, taking a look at both Rebecca and Lucy, their first couple of early sequence nodes, so that you can make a decision on whether or not you have this, who you actually want to focus on when it comes to their dupes. Because certain dupes are going to be a lot better for your account than others, depending on what you want to do, what teams you want to be better, and of course, who specifically you're the most interested in when it comes to this collab. So without further ado, let's go into it just one by one and get ourselves started over here with probably the one you're thinking about the most, Lucy. So Lucy's S1 is very, very, very bad. It is one of the worst S1s in the game, personally. And the main bonus that it has is a 20% attack boost when you use your intro skill. That is the main damage increase this S1 gives, about 2 substats. The other bonuses it has is that she's going to be immune to interruption when using certain abilities in her kit. Can actually be pretty decent, can actually be good, but most of the time she doesn't need this heavy interruption resistance. And then the other bonus it's going to get is like this. When Lucy loses her ultimate, right, she has a bunch of spoofing programs she can use, all these different debuffs that she can apply, right, in the Cyberpunk 2077 interface. Essentially, if she defeats an enemy with certain long-lasting debuffs, right? Ones that don't do damage, the ones that, like, reduce their defense, right? Or the ones that, like, reduce their attack, the ones that, like, make them, you know, have cyberpsychosis. When she defeats an enemy, she will then apply all debuffs that are continuous in an AoE of 10 meters. That sounds crazy, right? These are Lucy's debuffs, bro. Reduce their attack by 5%. Have a chance to reduce their damage. Marked enemies take 5% more damage, and their defense is reduced by 5%. They're, like, nice, but they're also not, like, to the degree of, like, oh my gosh, this is going to change the game and change your damage dramatically. Because guess what? This shit lasts for 30 seconds. So in single target content, that S1 and the spreading of it is fucking useless. So it might as well not exist in the TOA, because you're just gonna have permanent uptime of your debuffs anyways. So it's like a whimpering wastes only sort of thing, and like the damage increase relatively is not, it might be enough to like slightly bump up her viability a little bit in Weewa, but it's not like these buffs are like dramatic damage increases, right? For everybody. So it's just like, it's a nice to have that's like thematically cool, but as a relative damage increase, guys, I think people have done the math. This is like a 5% damage increase over S0. And most of the damage increase is coming from these 2 substats right here that it's 2 fucking substats, guys. It's not, what am I even, okay, anyways. So there is a silver lining to this situation. While this gives you almost no damage at all, it will bring you closer to a sequence node that actually does do damage. And that's going to be the Black Wall, the Past, the Escape, Lucy's S2. And what this does over here is it's very simple. It increases her starting RAM to 32 in her Liberation. This essentially means that you can now inflict every single debuff that you have available in your kit. Before, you only had 24 RAM. She gets 8 more with her S2, and so she can use more of the debuffs. Before, you had to like choose a couple of them to not use. It wasn't really that important anyways, because they're not like that absurdly strong, but now you don't have to choose anymore. The other bonus that it gives you is that her second skill, which is something you use every rotation, is going to deal an additional 450% of her attack as heavy attack damage, her main scaling type, and then you'll also get this. All of the debuffs from her ultimate will apply on that hit. Do you kind of see how useless her S1 kind of is now, where you were already applying it again on her S2? So it's kind of just like her S2 almost sort of makes her S1 seem pointless, except again, in like Whimpering Waste where there's 500 enemies, you were already applying all your debuffs 2 times a rotation though, so it's like, did you really need a third? Especially when the debuffs aren't that good. However, there are some other bonuses too. When using her heavy attack multi-threading, if Lucy has sequel, which she gets once a rotation, she can buff that heavy attack damage, and it's going to go from a 270% multiplier to 560. And so this is the motion value that they're talking about over here. Heavy attack, multi-threading. So at a baseline, this don't look that crazy, right? This is 59.65 times 4. That's basically like 240% motion value. And before, it was like at like a 700, 800. Now it's going to be at like a couple thousand%. So yeah, a 560% damage multiplier on a 240% scaling is pretty high. And that's why Lucy's S2 is probably going to be the go-to pick for most individuals that just want the Edge Runners team to be better. Because Lucy's S2, if you only had a choice across the Rebecca Lucy team, her S2 is going to be better for the team to be better. And one of the reasons for that is this is a massive damage increase. We've already talked about it. There's a lot of motion values popping up in here. But you also get closer to her S3. And Lucy's S3 is truly where shit starts getting like crazy. And then you begin to see, oh yeah, this unit's going to be strong. The damage multiplier of Override from her Liberation is going to be increased by 50%. This thing already has a massive motion value, and it's going to get a crit damage increase of 100. She's also going to get the damage multiplier of some of her spoofing programs increase. And this is a short one. It doesn't look that wild. These are the motion values. This one is 1800%. So this thing is going to get a 50% damage increase, and then also 100% additional crit damage on top of this. So, like, realistically, this will hit for like, millions. This already hits close to 1 million at S0. So when this thing gets a 100% crit damage increase, guys, and 50% more motion value, you can probably guess what's going to happen. You're also going to get these two as well. Their damage multiplier is going to get increased too. And I know it's not like that much, but it's a little nice to have on top. The main bonus, of course, is making this nuke wild. So really, Lucy's S2 and S3 are such massive damage increases relative to S1. A lot of people can probably find getting that free sequence node for Lucy's S1 is worth it just because you're one step closer to these two. They're absolutely fucking bonkers. And I think, like, it's already shown up in my guide. It's already going to show up with some of, like, the characters, right? Might as well just show all of you just how much of a relative damage increase some of the stuff actually is. And so this is basically just the rundown from Pride One. Lucy at S0, 100%, right? They're looking at the percentage of S0. S2 is 131% of S0. S1 is 105. Remember I said 5.5%. S3 is 178. So it's like this one up goes like is 26% from S0. This one's like 46, 47% from S2. So, like, that's what I'm talking about over here, just in terms of, like, if you're looking for the most individual performance, Lucy's nodes are probably the way to go. Now, though, this is where the conversation is going to switch, because there's also another character. And this is the reality. It's a lot cheaper to S1, S2, S3 Rebecca than it is Lucy, because you got one copy of Rebecca for free. So why don't we go ahead and start taking a look at her S1, because theoretically, it's actually cheaper to get... Like an S3 Rebecca is technically the same as an S2 Lucy, right? In terms of the number of pulls you would need, you would have just pulled Rebecca instead of Lucy. So let's see over here. S1. Damage multipliers of her basic normal attacks, right, in both forms is going to be increased by 50%. And you might be saying a damage multiplier increase of 50 is crazy. Second, she's also going to get stamina recovery, which is functionally useless unless she's on fielding. And these attacks she only does when she's on fielding. So you can see that this S1 immediately is focused on her personal damage. There's really no other way to look at this. Her personal damage and her on-field maneuverability and stuff like that. She's also going to get a little interruption resistance on the final part of her ultimate. That doesn't matter because you're always swapping off on it. So it's kind of pointless there. The reason why this isn't that good is very simple. These are the damage multipliers on her basic attacks. So it kind of doesn't matter that much that they're getting a 50% increase because they're not really that high. I mean, they're decently high, especially on the stuff like her dodge counter and stuff, but it's like, at the end of the day, it's not enough to turn her into a DPS because there's not really that many attacks you're going to be doing on her in most situations. It gets her closer though. And that's the thing. Most people are not going to be able to fully utilize the power of this S1 until they get her later sequence nodes, because her later sequence nodes truly do expand on her DPS ability a lot. It's just this first one doesn't feel like that well placed relatively. However, though, it might be able to get you to S2. And S2 is really where stuff starts getting really interesting. Because S2 is a blend of personal damage, but also team supporting ability. Casting intro skill, her liberation, either intro skill or liberation, is going to grant a 20% all attribute damage bonus to the entire team. Very similar to other S2s for other units. And when somebody inflicts hack shifting, they gain a 15% all damage amp. And then her hot hand, which is basically her way to get a bunch of crit and defense ignore buffs, that's going to regenerate twice as fast when she's out of combat. So essentially, Rebecca's going to gain 20% all damage bonus and also 50% all damage amp because this affects her, but Lucy's going to get that too. So if you're truly looking for like the strongest Lucy damage ever, you would like S6 Lucy and then like S2 Rebecca. Because S2 Rebecca effectively provides all these stats for Lucy while she's on the team. But that's kind of the situation. This S2, though, is way worse for the team's damage than just getting Lucy's S2. This S2 gets nowhere close to the damage increase relatively of Lucy going to S2 and especially Lucy going to S3. Bro, she just like gulping in the background, bro. Bro, she's been drinking this for the past 20 minutes. How is it not empty yet? Anyways, this one, most people are not going to be going. And it makes sense because Lucy's S2 is better. And this kind of does increase some of her general supporting ability. But guys, it's 20% all attribute damage bonus. That's not that wild in the first place. And no person in the game other than Lucy can benefit from this all damage amp from hack shifting. So it's kind of even like a little bit constrained by itself. Now though, for S3, you might be wondering, okay, surely, right, she can do something over here. Her S3 is going to give her liberation a 60% damage multiplier increase. It's going to have 30% more explosion range, which is actually going to be good for AoE. But then she's also going to get more points of hot hand, which is going to give her a buzz faster. But this isn't that good. The issue with Rebecca is that she really doesn't get a lot of nice bonuses until she gets to like S6. That's kind of like what she is. It's like her first and her sixth nodes are kind of like the most DPS oriented. And as you can see in here, the bonuses that you get over here are not very impressive from S3 to S4 to S5. S6 though is where her shit gets crazy. 40% more basic attack damage from every source and 900% attack nuke over here than some other shit. You can kind of see what's going on. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that Lucy's nodes, on average, are just going to be way more satisfying to most individuals compared to getting Rebecca's. Because Rebecca kind of really only has interesting stuff on S1 and S6, where S1 opens up a little bit of potential for her as a main DPS, but then it doesn't really change at all until she gets to S6 because the later nodes are just kind of like so weak. While Lucy, on the other hand, her S3 is absolutely bonkers. And so I think that Rebecca is just S6 bait for the people that really want to play her as a main DPS, because her on-field kit is pretty cool, while Lucy is more so S3 bait, S2 bait. And when you kind of have only like a limited selection to like choose from, and then of course you have like the Coral Shop as well, but it's not really going to work out that well for you in the Coral Shop, considering you got to get to 480, it's probably best to just go for Lucy's S1 and then like maybe pray you get lucky with some of the extra pulls, right? Because like this is what I got to do over here, right? Bro, I got 10 pulls. They're going to expire when the collabs does. So it's like, yeah, why don't I just grab that? Got some more logins as well. Fuck it. I'll just throw a 10 pull out here. Maybe I'll get lucky. Yeah, no, that's not going to happen. Hey, we got more corals though, right? Because there's not really like anything else for you to do while the collab is going, and then the pull counts just keep kind of like racking up. So who knows? Maybe you will end up with like an S2 or an S3 Lucy by the time you're done. That could absolutely be a thing. But that's what I would suggest that most people go for if you do plan on interacting with the collaboration. Because the end result of doing that is you'll have like a very sort of like permanent team that you won't have any issue at all running for, I would assume, the rest of the lifetime of the game. While at S0, these characters definitely aren't dog shit, but they aren't at the top of the meta like units like Imith, like your Lukes, like your Hiyuki, so on and so forth. And that's probably good for the game, right? For collab units that don't come back ever, hypothetically, right, that are only available for 30 days to kind of only be the strongest units ever if you're, well, wailing on them. Because temporary units like this, you don't really want FOMO like that, where they're at the top of the meta. They're the best units ever, and if you don't have them, your account feels like it's bricked, because nobody wants that feeling with units that are only going to be available for 30 days out of the entire lifespan of the game. And that can easily, right, be something that happens over here. So to me, the units being like sort of on the lower end of the meta, but still viable, is solid enough, I think, for most people, and should be solid enough for a lot of individuals. And kind of like wishing for anything else means that, well, I'm just gonna be honest, I don't think you should be a game designer, because you probably EOS your game, making decisions like the way you want to make them. So yeah, hopefully this overview, this breakdown, all the different little bits and pieces that you've seen about the sequence nodes, all of that was helpful, so that you can decide how you want to budget your polls, your spending, all of that moving forward across this collaboration. Because there's, you just, one thing you definitely don't want to do is get the wrong character sequence node from here and then end up regretting it later. Because, like, I just feel like this is something you do want to make a relatively good decision on. That's just me, though. It is what it is. But also do keep in mind, this is really just to, like, get their S2s or their S3s. Because we've already seen both units' S1s kind of suck ass. They're both kind of dog shit. They're both kind of terrible. And in a similar vein, if you don't plan on doing or getting that second copy, maybe it doesn't matter whose you choose. Or maybe you just go, if you don't plan on getting the S2, maybe you just go for Rebecca's S1, because it kind of makes her a bit more of an on-fielder, and you can try that out. Who knows? It is what it is. You're free to make your own decision. I'm just here to provide the information so that you can best make it. Let me know what you all thought. Peace out.